Hello everyone and welcome back to another Blender material tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a very basic procedural metal material inside a Blender using this model screw we made in the last video. So make sure to check that out if you want to know how to model this. So without further ado, I'm going to turn on my overlays here. I'm going to left click my screw here and I'm going to come up to the top left hand corner here and I'm just going to left click and drag. And now I'll get a new window. And I'll change my editor type to shader editor. Then I'll pan along and then zoom in. And then I'll press N so this menu disappears. And I'm also going to change into this material preview, which is this button here. And I'll turn off my overlays so I can see what I'm working with. So click plus new here and I'll press N on the keyboard to make that disappear. I'll drag this out a bit more and I'm going to press Shift A, come down to vector and left click bump. Plug my bump into my normal, and what a bump does is it simulates depth in the material without you actually having to edit the mesh, so it can be very useful. You'll see what I mean once I start editing things here. I'm going to change my metallic value to 1, and one thing to keep in mind when we're working with materials like these is make sure to save frequently. So just press Ctrl S on the keyboard frequently. Now I'll press Shift A and I'm going to come to texture and I'm going to choose noise texture. I'll plug my FAC into the height and straight away you can see this has happened. We're going to come up to edit here, preferences, then I'm going to come to add-ons. I'm going to search node wrangler and you can see this one here. If we check this box, this has a couple of handy tools you can use to speed up making our procedural materials. So I'm just going to left click my noise texture and press Ctrl T, and that's automatically going to add these two new nodes, the mapping node and the texture coordinate. So I'm going to turn it off from generate and I'm going to change it to object. And now that's looking a lot better already. I can now change my scale here. So I'm going to make it quite big. So maybe I'll turn it to around 7. I might change that though. And I'll change my detail value to 16. I'm going to increase my roughness value very high to maybe around 8.5. And I'm going to turn down my strength here. And now you can see this is more than just a simple metal material. It's got quite a bit of texture to it already. Then what I can do is I can mess around my roughness value here in my principled BSDF. I don't want to make it too reflective because as you can see that looks quite strange like that. So I'm probably going to go for a value of around 0.4 and that should do nicely. I'm also going to decrease my strength a little bit more down here to around there should do nicely. And I'll show you the before and after. So this is with the bump node and this is without the bump node. So I'll plug my bump back in, and for some of you, you may be just satisfied with that, but I'm going to show you how to make one with a bit more rust on it. So all I'm going to do is come up to the top here. I'm going to name this material metal, and I'm now going to select my object, press Shift D, and then I'll press G and X to move it along. I'll then move along in my viewport, so I'm now focusing on this one here, move it along a little more. And now up in my metal here, I'm going to press this button here, which will essentially duplicate this one, and I'm going to call this one metal rust. Now I'll press Shift A and I'll come down to converter and I'm going to choose color ramp. I'm going to plug that in between my noise texture and my bump. So I'll just drag it into here and that'll automatically sort itself out. Now for this one, I'm going to increase the strength of the roughness here since it is supposed to be a little bit more worn down. So maybe up to around 0.8 should do. And now you can see when I change this slider here, different parts of the surface will become rough. I'm going to increase the strength even more. About there should do nicely. I'm going to left click this, press Shift D, and I'm now going to plug this into the color. I'll then hook up the FAC from the noise texture into the FAC on this color ramp here, which essentially controls the color of the material itself. So I'm going to change the color of this darker one here to sort of rusty sort of color. And I'm going to drag this slider along and you can see we're getting some rust now. Maybe need to make it a bit more vibrant. I'm also going to change the scale of my noise texture, maybe actually make it a bit smaller. So around maybe 5 or 3 even. Now I'll mess around with the color of my rust here a bit. Now one thing I'm going to do is under my bump here, I'm going to click this invert button and now it's going to be so all this rust here is now getting corroded inward. So I can turn up maybe the strength tiny bit, maybe to around there will do nicely. I'll then press plus on my color ramp here. I'm going to create a more saturated color just to go right at the edge. Brilliant. I'll also make this color here a little darker. So rather than just a plain white, make it more kind of like slight grey. One last thing I can add here is I can press Shift D on my bump here and I can plug that into the normal, turn off invert on that one, press Shift D on my color ramp, plug my factor there into my factor here, and put my color into my height information. Then I'm going to press this drop down and press flip color ramp. And now you notice I have roughness again on the parts that aren't rust. So I'm going to need to turn my strength down. I'm going to make it a little stronger than the other one. So maybe I'll put it to 0.11 and there we have it. I'm also going to come up to my noise texture here and I'm going to change the roughness value a little bit to about 0.8. And there we have a very simple rust texture and normal metal texture. I hope you all found this video useful. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I make more videos in the future. Thank you all very much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.